Alright guys, my name is Rogelio Reynoso. I teach geometry at the high school level. I work at Rancho High School. It's a Title I school, so it's full of diversity. It's full of ELL students. It's made up of 70% Hispanics, okay? I do work summers, and so you guys can see how it went from the lesson plan to actually being implemented. Okay, so should we get started here? Now, just like I said in my lesson plan, this is going to be for a probability lesson in a geometry class. So we started off with the warm-up. Now, this warm-up consisted of, all that was on the board was a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. Okay, now these words in the actual PowerPoint, there was only the 6 words, and that was it. Now, as soon as the kids walked in, sat down, relaxed, started writing this, they started asking me questions. What's going on? What is this? Because they're expecting their regular warm-up. Now, I told them that this is going to be slightly different. So what happened today here is I had these 6 words up on the board, and they had to do 2 things. First was either grab their iPads, their textbooks, their dictionaries that were on the shelves, and go ahead and find me the definition of each one of these 6 words. After that, I told them that the second part was to go ahead and give me a life, kind of a real life situation, or something to see on TV, or a life experience, something they could relate this to. Now, it doesn't have to be specifically about, like for example, if I was looking at independent events, I don't have to look at, I don't have to be working with probability to do this. Just give me 2 live events that have nothing to do, that are independent of each other. So this is fairly simple. And go ahead and relate this. This way they could bridge to their previous stuff. After that, after I gave them sufficient enough time, I went ahead and put up 3 posters. So took this, I'll show you the 3 right now. So I took these 3 posters and I made them into poster size. That way they have something to refer back to, so that my ELL students and my regular students, for that matter, also have something to refer back to during their in-class section of their of the assignments here. So first of all, the first poster was just a list of the vocabulary words that we went over. And I did this because I wanted them to be able to just look up and see the meaning of each word as they saw them in the problem. Now the second poster I printed out in large. Now this being a probability lesson, it uses a lot of die, it uses a lot of deck of cards, it uses a lot of things like that. So what I went ahead and did is, I went ahead and printed out this full deck of cards, so all 52 cards are here. It describes them as Jack, Queen, and King, Ace. It describes the 4 suits, and you can see it gives them a visual of what I'm explaining to them. And I also went ahead and added this part where I describe what is a face card. Face cards are Jack, Queen, and King, and this is going to be very important when it comes to asking probability questions. So when I went ahead and I just printed this out, I made it in life size so that they have something to refer back to when I'm asking these questions in the quiz and the in-class activity, and as well as if some students got a chance to go ahead and start their homework. Now the third poster I printed out was it's a lot like their homework. I'm sorry, it's a lot like their notes. So what I went ahead and did is I printed this out, and it's just pretty much 4 different examples that are completely written out in detail. So what that allows them is, it allows them to model the way I want them to see their work. So it serves as a reference and as a model for their own work. Now, I went ahead and added some vocabulary words here. It's pretty specific on what each number represents, where it comes from. And so I put these 3 posters up on the board. Now this helps my ELL students, help my regular students. It is not just for them, alright? And then my ELL students also had some other kinds of help. So for example, they were sitting next to bilingual students, therefore they were able to go ahead and talk and discuss. I told them right when they walked in, you're able to talk to them, you're able to ask your bilingual partners any kind of questions you may have. And when it's a small group, so whenever I have a 2-person group or a small partner activity, that's going to be the designated partner. Now that allows them to go ahead and practice in native tongue. At the same time, they're also practicing their math skills, which is actually extremely helpful for them. They're allowing to keep the culture as well. They introduce them to the new material. So I start getting my notes. So now this being a probability lesson, there's not a lot of new material to cover. It's just a lot of new concepts. So I thought the best idea to go ahead and do this is to go ahead and just model based on examples. So I went ahead and picked out several examples to go ahead and so I picked out 1, 5, and 8. And what I did is I told them, all right, let's take out our notebooks and we'll go ahead and do these 3 problems as a class on our notebooks, and that will be our reference to go ahead for the rest of this worksheet, which is going to be their in-class activity as well. So in the notebooks, we were working that out, and pretty much we did step by step of what we were doing, how to solve this, what each number came from, how to get to a final answer, an explanation of each one of these. So it's actually very detailed. So that was what we did for 3 of these. We did this for our second worksheet. And again, we just did a couple of these problems in our workbook. Nothing too impressive. But again, our workbook and our notes were very detailed. Now, as I was doing this, I picked out 2 problems that each student could do with their partner. That way they could alternate in teaching one another on how to think about these problems, because most of these parts, there's not a lot of math. It's mostly concept questions we're dealing with. So by having them talk to each other, collaborate, it allows them to go ahead and memorize this better and understand it better. After this, we had after this in-class notes, I had them take a quiz. Now I built this quiz on Google Forms. I printed it out so you guys can see this. This is a Google document here. It's there's a total of 7 questions. There's a 6-question quiz. The last question is just a survey questions I did on my own here. But pretty much, these 6 questions in Google Forms allow me to give immediate feedback to my students. And the questions I ask are very similar to the questions they will find in an actual test or in their midterm later on. So what I would ask is exactly the same thing as our notes, or something, the same thing they will see in their homework, exactly the same thing they will see in their in-class activity. Now the reason I do this is that I need my stuff to be predictable. And this is all this stuff I learned in class. And just seeing the reactions, seeing the interest in the students' faces, it really changed the way I look at lesson plans. This is the first lesson plan I do. Well, not the first lesson plan I do, I'm sorry. I've been teaching for a while now. It's the lesson plan I have spent the most time on, to be honest. But I saw the difference in the actual class. I saw how engaged the students were, how there was no gaps. One of the biggest problems I saw, however, was that when I first put up the warm-up vocabulary thing, or when I first introduced the in-class presentations, that they were confused and took a little bit extra time, and it's time that I could spend doing my regular methods. However, I feel like as we practice this every day, or as we introduce more methods and they become familiar with the process, that